Has it ever happened to you that you started your manifestation journey? You were doing good for the first few days, but eventually you started feeling negative. You started getting negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative assumptions. And you also started to see that your circumstances started to bother you more. Even the circumstances that were not bothering you that much now suddenly bothers you. You feel super sensitive towards the stimuli and the triggers that you're getting, and you feel that you're not doing something correctly. This is what we call resistance, and resistance is a very normal part of the manifestation process. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if you're not getting resistance, it means that you're doing something wrong. Because if you're getting resistance, it means that your old self is trying to fight your new assumptions, which is always a good thing. In this video, I will explain step by step what is resistance, how you can deal with it, what are different ways to deal with thoughts, feelings, and how you can implement it in your manifestation journey on a daily basis. So, first thing I would say is resistance is very normal. As I said, if you're not getting resistance, it is also an indication that you're doing something wrong. Getting resistance can then mean that you're doing something right. Let's understand why that is the case. See, you have a particular way of living. You have a particular set of beliefs, perceptions, and thoughts. And these also might bring up feelings, actions, and boundaries that you have. And even though you don't have what you want, you have still been alive for whatever your age is. And let's say you are the age of 25. You have been alive for 25 years because of these thoughts. Now, you might not have the relationship that you want, you might not have the money that you want, you might not have the career that you want, but you're still alive. The thing about your mind is, your mind doesn't actually care if you get what you want or not. Your mind is there for a primary reason to keep you alive. And sometimes, even when you have went through all of these things and you have came out kicking and winning, how your mind thinks is in terms of safety. So, in your mind, it wants to feel safe. It wants to feel comfortable. It wants to predict that this is only what will happen so that we don't have to expect uncertainty. And we don't have to change because why change something which has kept me alive till this time? So, when you start to change your thought process, when you start to create new assumptions, when you start to give yourself new beliefs to believe, your mind retaliates. Your old self starts to give you resistance, not because of anything else, but because it wants to protect you. But because the old comfort zone is so familiar that your old self doesn't want to leave that. Because your old self feels that you don't have to actually change it in order for you to be any way, shape, or form happy because you're still alive. And you don't have to try to change it because why would you do something in order to change something that is already working? So I hope you get the gist of it or why your mind and your body does that. So, in truth, resistance coming must mean that we are doing something right. Because when resistance is coming, it means that your mind actually feels that your new beliefs are starting to become true. Your new beliefs are starting to cement. So, when your resistance comes, it is actually a prerequisite to getting what you want. It is basically like a test. Now, you can pass that test by responding towards it as your new self, or you can fail that test by going back and reacting in the same way. So, one thing I will say with resistance is never ignore it. You must have heard this advice a lot: ignore your physical world, but never ignore it. Ignoring your 3D in any way, shape, or form does not mean that ignore resistance. In fact, a lot of people say Neville Goddard talked about ignoring the physical world. This is not what Neville Goddard said. And I will actually quote him from one of his books. This book is called At Your Command. This is a part of the complete reader. So if you want to read it, you can also buy this book. But here he says this one sentence. He says, to dissolve a problem now that seems so real to you, all that you do is remove your attention from it. In spite of it seeming reality, turn from it in consciousness. Become indifferent and begin to feel yourself to be who you would be if the solution to the problem is here. Do you see? I just got so excited to tell you. Do you see how he's not saying to ignore your thoughts? Do you see how he's not saying to ignore it? He's saying become indifferent to it. Ignoring means you're not even acknowledging that it exists. Being indifferent means that you're accepting that it exists, you just don't let it create an emotional response in you. So, in truth, when you ignore it, you know what actually happens? You get more focus on it. Because let's say I'm getting a negative thought and I'm consistently just telling myself, I need to ignore this, I need to ignore this. What am I truly doing? I'm constantly focusing on that thought. So, what is my main focus on that time? It is the thought itself. And that is why it keeps on coming back. That is why ignoring resistance doesn't help. So now I will give you three different ways in which resistance comes into your life. I will also tell you what are the best ways through which you can deal with that resistance. Now, when you're getting resistance at the start of any of these things, and I will tell you exactly how to deal with them, understand that it is not going to be a daily easy process. It is not going to be something that just fixes itself in a day. When you're getting resistance, the first thing that you do, at the first thing when you're getting resistance, is to identify the cause of it. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to keep on identifying the cause of it again and again. So, let's say I'm getting a negative thought that why am I not loved? I'm never chosen. Now, I can understand and ask myself, why am I getting this thought? Maybe it's because when I was young, my mom didn't constantly treat me right, whatever it is. And because of which I developed this belief that other people in my life will do the same. Now, once you have understood the cause of it, identifying the cause of it again is not really going to be helpful every time, right? You don't have to keep on getting into the solution mode and finding thoughts again and again. After you have understood where it comes from, try to focus on the solution, right? Try to focus on the real reason why this is there. Now, there are three different kinds of resistance that you will face. One resistance would be in terms of thoughts, one would be in terms of when you are having negative feelings, and one would be in terms of when you're just feeling negative without any thoughts at all. So this is very common. The last one is very common for people who have anxiety in general. If you are someone who says that I have an anxious attachment style, or I'm someone who is just anxious daily, this is one of the biggest resistances that you will face, because I am someone who also gets a lot of negative resistant feelings, and this is not usually connected to the thoughts with me. So I thought that I will also give you a solution for that. So now I will give you step by step solutions to deal with all of these exactly. So the first one, what to do if it's just thoughts. By this I mean if you're getting negative thoughts when it comes to your manifestation. See, this is very common. So on an average, you will have 30,000 thoughts which are negative, because on an average you have 60,000 thoughts in a day, right? So let's say half of them are negative. In and out, when these thoughts will come, first thing you need to recognize is these thoughts are in themselves not negative or positive. They're just thoughts. Now, if a thought is supporting what you want, you call it positive. If it is not supporting what you want, you're calling it negative, right? So they are not inherently negative or positive. They are based and created negative and positive when we assign a meaning to it. So if I want something and I get an opposite thought to that, that is when I say it is a negative thought. So the first thing to do when you're getting these thoughts is just to call them thoughts. Stop calling them negative, positive. Don't say these things because it labels it that way. Now, when you are getting these negative thoughts, first thing you have taken the meaning away. The next thing to do is to tell yourself that there is no rule that I cannot get this thought, because I can get this thought and still get what I want. Now, when it is just thoughts, you will not have that level of emotional charge to it. So you can just tell yourself this and you will automatically feel better. You can also then give yourself a very general affirmation that you repeat when you get these negative thoughts. It can be, I'm loved, I'm blessed, I'm chosen, I get what I want. Any one of these that you can pick, and you can just keep on repeating that to yourself. Now, if your resistance is the second type, which is the most common form of resistance, this will not work, because in that moment your mind and your body is actually not open to listening. It is just very resistant. In this moment, and when you are getting these negative thoughts, the first thing that you have to do is you have to understand that I will have to isolate the feeling and the thought differently. I cannot deal with the thought the same way that I have been dealing with it before. So, this is how you go about it. You accept that I got this negative feeling. Now, identify where you feel this feeling. Let's say the feeling is sadness. So, where you feel that sadness? Do I feel it in my chest? Do I feel it in my stomach? Where is it that you are feeling that resistance, right? Now, when you feel that feeling, ask yourself that I will not attach myself with this feeling. Whenever you attach it to yourself, you become that. So instead of saying I feel sad, when we say I am sad, I become sad. So instead of that, just say I feel this, I feel negative, I feel lonely. I am not lonely, I just feel lonely. Then ask yourself, what part of my body am I feeling it in? So let's say it is in my stomach or it is in my chest. Now put your right hand there, or you can even put your left hand, that's fine, but just put your one of your hand there and take a few deep breaths. As you take a few deep breaths, directly imagine that the breath is going in the part of the feeling in your body. So if it's in your stomach, imagine that the air that you are inhaling is directly going into the stomach, right? Now take a few deep breaths and imagine that the breath is directly going there. As you exhale, imagine that the air is taking some of that feeling out. After you do this, understand that you will have to make the exhales slower than the inhales, right? That would really help, because when your exhales are slower, your body is calming down your nervous system. You're getting into the parasympathetic nervous system slowly. It would really help to calm yourself down. Eventually, this will stop triggering you that much. Now, this doesn't mean that the trigger will instantly go away, but you will come back to your logical senses. And this is where you can start to deal with the thoughts the same way that you dealt with it in the step one. Do it for a while and you will eventually start to make yourself feel better, and then you can deal with the thoughts just like I told you. Now, I know I told you you don't need to ignore your feelings, right? You don't need to just run away from your feelings. But the third one is going to be very important, where you're just getting negative feelings consistently. Now, let me tell you how to deal with that. So, first, let's understand the difference between being ignorant, I'm ignoring my feelings, and honoring them and being indifferent. So, ignoring your feelings means that you're not accepting that they exist. An example can be, let's say I'm having a negative feeling. Let's say today I'm feeling lonely and I'm feeling anxious. So, ignoring would look like I'm not feeling anxious at all. That is not the best way to move forward. Being indifferent looks like I am feeling that negative feeling, and that's okay. I can still deal with this by not giving it an emotional charge. Now, when you are just focused on the negative feeling, first of all, do the same things that you did with the breath, with the feeling, with the breath going inside that particular spot in your body. And this is the same one as the second part. But after that, when it is just a general negative feeling, don't try to stop yourself from feeling that. Instead, try to replace it. What can I do today that can make me slightly happier? And then I will do something, an activity, whatever it is that can make me feel happy. For these things, I really have a list with myself. I know that these are feel good activities. It can be playing with my dog, it can be going out for a cup of coffee, it can be going out on a bike ride, it can be calling one of my friends, it can be watching this one show that I know always makes me laugh. In that moment, once you stop pushing yourself to stop feeling something, you will automatically accept it. And then once you start giving yourself some positive feeling, you will instantly help yourself. Distraction really helps in this particular moment because it takes your focus away. So instead of ignoring it, you become indifferent towards it, which is what your favorite teacher Neville Goddard asked you to do. Now, if you start doing these things correctly, this doesn't mean that your resistance will go away in a day or two. It can, but it might not. So don't set unrealistic expectations for yourself. Tell yourself it's okay even if this resistance stays for a while, because I now have the tools to deal with it. Resistance is not something to be afraid about. It is just like when you go to the gym, you start feeling pain in your legs, in your body the next day. And anyone who has had a leg day after a long period of time knows that the next day is slightly difficult to walk. You don't run away from that, or you don't stop going to the gym. You actually take that as a sign that, oh, I must have had a great workout. Think of resistance the same way and you will absolutely get the best results for it. So, to sum it up, resistance is a normal part of your manifestation process. It is nothing to be ignored. There are tools that you can use to deal with it, which I have just shared in this whole video. Start applying this and see your life change. I will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe and share if you liked the video. The link for my one-on-one coaching, my self-help courses, and my free newsletter are in the description box below.